welcome everybody to the product information call. Before we get started, just need to tell you a few things. This is an information call only and should not replace the medical advice of your personal physician. None of the statements or studies referenced in this presentation relate specifically to Gano XL products, so individual results may vary. We encourage you to use common sense and prudence in evaluating your expectations while consuming Gano XL products. Statements made during this call have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and Gano XL products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our host for the evening, Mr. Shane Moran.
All right, thanks, Greg, for the introduction. In just a moment, I'll be introducing you to Dr. Ken Kroll. First of all, I want to welcome all the healthcare practitioners throughout North America who have taken the time to call in tonight. This call is designed specifically to introduce healthcare practitioners and people who want to know more about Ganoderma lucidum and the world's first choice. So welcome to the call. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Ken Kroll and his talk entitled Ganoderma lucidum, Power Food of the Ages. Dr. Kroll brings to Gano XL his excellent academic credentials from Rutgers, Harvard, Stanford. He is double board certified in surgery and anti-aging medicine. He has extensive clinical experience managing human health and disease. He has a deep understanding and extensive knowledge of Ganoderma lucidum and how it improves health, and he's considered a leading expert in adaptogen. Dr. Kroll subscribes to some 30 medical journals, health newsletters, and internet databases for monthly review. He also brings a genuineness and sincerity that are well received by healthcare practitioners and customers alike. Dr. Kroll's married to his wife, Diane, who was recently certified as a doctor of naturopathy, doing her doctoral thesis on non-pharmaceutical approaches to management of overweight and obesity. As a specialist in anti-aging medicine and with his wealth of natural product experience, Dr. Kroll is a valuable asset to Gano XL and will be instrumental in helping to introduce these powerful, life-enhancing products to North American customers and healthcare practitioners alike. And Dr. Kroll's talk is entitled Ganoderma lucidum, Power Food of the Ages. Welcome to the call, Dr. Kroll.
Thank you, Shane, and thank you, Craig. It's my great pleasure to be here with all of you this evening, talking about something that's been of great interest to me in recent months, and that's Ganoderma lucidum and the powerful effects that it can have on good health. We've got some very interesting things to share with all of you this evening, and especially those of you who are health professionals. I can promise you my approach to this is totally scientific, and I'm with this company because I've looked at their products extensively, and I'm a great believer in the power of natural substances like Ganoderma lucidum and the adaptogens to make very important differences in the quality of health. First of all, we have the subjects that I'll just briefly touch are coffee and then Ganoderma lucidum, our primary emphasis, and then the adaptogens. Let's talk just briefly about coffee. Coffee's been controversial, as you all know, for many years. There are some people say, oh, it's bad for you, and many of us physicians recommend that people with certain health problems don't drink coffee. And the problem is that regular coffee has been shown to result in low magnesium levels. It can increase calcium loss in the urine. It creates acidity that can irritate the stomach and produce metabolic acidosis. And incidentally, the combination of loss of magnesium and calcium in an acidotic setting is a perfect recipe for osteoporosis. And it's my personal belief that coffee is playing a major role, along with soda pop, interestingly, in our epidemic of osteoporosis, primarily in postmenopausal women. Drinking regular coffee can also, number 4, elevate homocysteine levels, another very interesting substance, first described in some detail by Kilmer McCulley at Harvard. And homocysteine has now been associated with a wide range of health disorders and diseases. And then, of course, cholesterol levels that can be elevated as a result also. And everybody knows that cholesterol can play a role in the production of certain heart diseases. Number 5, it can increase cardiac arrhythmias and heart disease. So regular coffee has a downside. Now, the Gano Cafe advantage is Gano Cafe has this remarkable substance, Ganoderma lucidum. And it's interesting that starting in as early as 2800 BC, the earliest medical texts that occurred in China had 3 classes of treatment that the Chinese understood at that early time, at a time when there was no medical science, but they had tested thousands of herbs and plants for their health-giving benefits. And it was in a book called the Shen Nung Ben Zhao Qing. Now there's a good one for all of you to memorize, to go around and share with your friends. But the first category in here was superior, those rare herbs that could prolong life, prevent aging, and boost qi, which is basic body energy. The second group were short-term tonics and boosters, not for prolonged use. And 3 were potent, sometimes toxic substances, only to be used for very short periods in specific acute illnesses. But the important point here is that even at this time, 4,000 years ago, a lot longer than that actually, of 365 listed substances, Ling Qi, or Ganoderma, was number 1 in the superior category. And interestingly, ginseng, which many of you that are into natural products are also familiar with, was number 2 in the list of superior. But Ling Qi Ganoderma has held that position of the number 1 in the superior category for centuries. And to move us ahead many, many hundred years, we introduce Liao Sun Seng, who is president of Gano XL International and began mushroom research in Malaysia in 1983. Now, I want to say a little bit about another problem that's been introduced into American society in recent months, and it has to do with the substantial amounts of Chinese foodstuffs that are now being investigated or banned because of toxicities and heavy metals and a whole group of problems. Dog food and things, cat foods, we're having some real problems. It's important for us in this company to realize that our products are not Chinese made. They all come from Malaysia, and Liao Sun Seng and his group of leaders and scientists have taken great precaution to keep the purity of these products. So these in no way relate to the things you're reading about in your newspapers and TV these days about products coming from China. He recognized the powerful benefits unique to Ganoderma lucidum from the Chinese history, and he developed organic culture methods in Malaysia for Ganoderma. He founded Gano XL in 1995 and created the world's largest Ganoderma lucidum plantation using organic methods. To understand Ganoderma's amazing powers and exalted status, we need to examine a major difference between Western medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. Put in most simple terms, Western medicine is reductionistic or reductionist, and Eastern medicine is holistic. Now, what does that mean? Well, in Western medicine, we, first of all, categorize all diseases. So that of the thousands of illnesses out there, we have specific titles and names for each one of them. And, of course, there's good with that. I'm not putting any of that down. I'm just pointing out difference here between Eastern and Western concepts or philosophies of medicine. Then we get into specific pharmaceutical agents to deal with that specific illness or disease. And I'll talk somewhere in this talk a little bit more about pharmaceuticals and the problems we have with them. But most recently, our research has been focused on the human genome, which means we're looking at genes now to see what aberrations are occurring in a specific gene on a such and such chromosome that might be related to this or that disease. It's almost the ultimate form of reductionism. Now, there are some insights that can come from that. But in contrast now, Eastern medicine looks at the whole body and looks and considers all disease to basically represent an imbalance that has taken place in human physiology and biochemistry. And it believes that the return to health is not so much a matter of finding a specific drug that could be given as it is to find rebalancing substances from nature, which gets us into the whole arena of herbs and things like Ganoderma, which then represents a holistic approach to restoring balance and restoring and rejuvenating the body. So there's two very different ways of looking at all this. Now, what health benefits are claimed for Ganoderma lucidum, Lingzhi in the Chinese? For whole Lingzhi extracts in vitro and in vivo, and that means in test tubes and petri dishes and also in animal and human systems in vivo, Lingzhi extracts have shown to be analgesic, which means that they're pain reducers, they're anti-allergy, they can reduce allergies, inflammation in the bronchitis in the lungs, it seems to be preventive. It has important anti-inflammatory characteristics. Now, the anti-inflammation thing has been of great interest to me in the last 5 years or so because very good studies are demonstrating clearly that almost all the chronic degenerative diseases of aging have a base inflammatory component to them. In other words, alterations in the immune system, since all inflammation in the body is produced by the immune system, alterations, weaknesses, or defects in our immune system are playing a role in the production of almost all chronic degenerative disease. I'll say a little bit more about that as we move on, but antibacterial characteristics, antiviral characteristics in these Lingzhi extracts. It's also an antioxidant. And antioxidants, a very interesting arena. I was just reading another article in the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association today, where studies now show that certain antioxidants were not effective in preventing cancer, and certain antioxidants, in this case, vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene, were not effective in reducing heart disease or myocardial infarction. But it's interesting to me, being both having a very good traditional allopathic medical training and also now having developed a real interest in what I'll call natural product and wellness substances, to see these studies, because the study, for example, on what they call the failure of antioxidants to reduce cardiac disease, it doesn't prove anything of the sort. What they've done is taken vitamin C in a synthetic form, vitamin E in only its D-alpha form. Vitamin E really has six types within it, 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols. And to me, you can't make any conclusion against antioxidants unless these things have been tested the way they occur in nature. The bottom line here is that these studies, even though they will be heralded on your television sets as evidence that somehow these natural supplements don't work, don't prove anything of the sort. From my point of view as a scientist, they're very poor studies that shouldn't even have been published. But at any rate, anti-tumor activity, again, because we are not allowed in this country by our FDA to make any claims regarding prevention or treatment of disease. I can't elaborate on this, but any of you who are health professionals, and anyone else for that matter, you can go to Google or to PubMed, and you can read the rather significant studies that have been done with Ganoderma lucidum in controlling various types of neoplastic growth. It supports healthy bone marrow, anti-depression. Now, there's an interesting one that I'm going to relate a little bit more to when we talk about the word adaptogen. But people with depression, we have used Prozac and Zoloft and a group of drugs that sometimes have led people to suicide, and many times they've been very helpful. But there are natural approaches to overcoming depression, and Lingzhi extracts, Ganoderma, have shown a real promise in that regard. The stuff also supports cardiac health and improves coronary artery blood flow. a very important additional feature is that they balance this. That Lingji balances and supports the immune system, and therefore it plays very important roles in this whole inflammatory cascade that I mentioned earlier. Is now known to be a foundational part of almost all chronic degenerative disease, interestingly, including things that we don't classically call disease yet, like overweight and obesity, have very important inflammatory components in their etiology. It also improves adrenal function, and that has to do with stress factors. Now, Ganoderma lucidum is an adaptogen. Now, adaptogens is a very interesting arena that I've become one of the country's specialists in recent years. And it was the word adaptogen really comes from Russian sources. The very highly decorated Soviet Academy of Sciences scientist, Dr. Israel Iskovich Brekman, in the early 1950s, discovered this rare group of plants and substances. In his case, it was Eleutherococcus senocosus, otherwise known as Siberian ginseng, which was the start of all this. And at any rate, various countries now have discovered that some of their most powerful natural supplements, like ashwagandha in India, Panax ginseng in Korea, Eleutherococcus in Russia, and of course Ganoderma lucidum in China and Malaysia, are all found to be powerful adaptogens. Now, what the Soviets were looking for were substances that could somehow help protect the body, in other words, to help the body adapt to extreme stresses in a variety of ways. And stress in all its forms, emotional, financial, metabolic, oxidative, chemical, bombard our lives 24/7 in the air we breathe, the junk foods we eat, the artificial beverages we drink. If I had to give any of you out there a tip to help improve the health of your families in one day, get soda pop out of your lives, and with it, phony substances like Gatorade. These things are in no way are good for health in my estimation, and I believe are substantially damaging factors in our environment. But the drugs we take, the chemical lotions we put on our skin, and the rapid-fire emotional onslaught of television, computers, and cell phones, a toxic soup that surrounds us and even interferes with sleep, our body's many times desperate attempt daily to tune out and heal itself. And here's a lady that looks like she has a little stress in her life, a normal working lady. Maybe not quite normal, but it looks like she has some problems. Next slide is our wonderful new cookbook, not ours, but I mean one that's out there, the Twinkies Cookbook, 50 Ways to Eat Your Twinkies. And I couldn't even believe it, but recently I heard of a new deep fat fried Twinkie, which is the new twist. And I can't even believe that here this stuff that's kind of like a sponge, you dip into this toxic grease, fry it for a while, and then you're supposed to consume this gut bomb. But at any rate, that's the stuff we're surrounded with in our markets. And I've said many times that the real health foods in all markets are around the edge of the market. They're in the fresh fruits, the fresh vegetables, the fresh dairy, the fresh meats, the raw nuts, and the whole grains. And even though I probably would start a movement to bulldoze out the 18 middle sections in every supermarket, I don't think it would be widely accepted. Adaptogens are not in the food we normally eat and must be taken as supplements. They are not drugs and have no side effects. They are unique among nutrients and work at the cellular level to restore, rebalance, and re-energize stress cells and organs. Thus, adaptogens work powerfully to take abnormal cell function and move it towards normal. Now, I can't emphasize how powerful and important those words are and what you see on that slide. Of the 29,000, and I'm sure by now it's 30,000 nutritional supplements that occur in the nutritional marketplace, I've examined the large categories of all of these, and I've tried hundreds myself and with friends. I consider the adaptogens to be number one on the list of the most important substances on planet Earth to help us stay healthy, create long life, and keep us free of disease as much as possible. But they are restorers, rebalancers, and re-energizers for cells and organs. The good news is that Ganoderma lucidum is a superior adaptogen, and Gano XL is the world's largest producer of quality organic Ganoderma lucidum. And here are a couple pictures from our own growth facility in Malaysia, showing these things grown in a GMP-compliant facility, which means good manufacturing practices by FDA standards in this country. It's organic, and it is very tightly controlled to avoid any contamination. Here's a little bit more of a close-up of one of these things. And it's an amazing fruiting body, as they call it, in this particular mushroom. It comes out with this very shiny glaze on it that just looks like it's been varnished. But in that remarkable red mushroom is still, I believe, the number one health substance that occurs in the natural world of adaptogens. So Ganoderma lucidum, to finish this talk, is still, I believe, the herb of immortality, the medicine of kings and emperors, the ultimate adaptogen tonic, and a power food of the ages. So this finishes my talk for this evening, and I want to be sure you're all not kept over time. And I'll just finish by saying that one of Dr. Breckman's early studies was that he felt that Western medicine was too dependent on pharmaceutical substances and therefore too restrictive. He felt that these pharmaceutical or drug isolates, which the pharmaceutical companies could patent and sell as individual products, comprised a very limited amount of atomic structural information that affected gene function. And by the pharmaceutical industry selecting only those drug synthetics which they could produce by patents, the American medical consumer receives only a small fraction of the world's healing compounds. I hope that gives you just a little clue of why something that consists of hundreds of interesting health-giving chemicals in Ganoderma lucidum has been of such interest to me, and I believe will be of increasing interest to the health profession as we become more and more integrated in our Western concepts with those that have existed in Eastern medicine for so long. So I want to thank you all for participating with us tonight, and Shane, back to you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for taking the time to call in to hear about the power food of the ages with Dr. Kroll. Hope you enjoyed that, and have a great night.